Hello and welcome to the 8th episode of the Fireside Chat. Today is May 17th, and we will be talking CBR, Constant Block Reward, and MRC, Manual Rewards Claim. The Fireside Chat is a get-together of Gridcoin participants and anyone really who would like to join from any community. It happens once a week, every Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern, midnight UTC on the Gridcoin Discord server. Feel free to join. There's a chat channel you can type in, so you don't need a mic to participate. And it's hosted by myself, Jay Ringo, our friend down below, the Goblin Popper.
Yeah.
And I Like Chocolate, who is on sabbatical this week. I think he went on vacation to Hawaii. He really likes volcanoes. Bad jokes. So let's do the news really quick. It was everyone's giving me trash in the chat right now. I deserve it. Not much news this week. There was another State of the Network report that came out last Saturday. Those come out every 2 Saturdays. Definitely take a look at those if you're interested in what's going on in the Gridcoin community and how the blockchain is operating in terms of block times and BOINC members and Gridcoin minted and all that fun stuff. And besides that, there wasn't much. Although I'm going to give a shout out to RCE Bike for a video he put together this week, which I thought was hilarious. He posted on Steemit. It's just a video of some cats ringing a bell. I'm just laughing thinking about it. These cats are ringing a bell every time he says Gridcoin. It's funny. But yeah, anyone else?
Do we have a link to that?
I will post it in the chat right now, and I'll try to remember to put it in the YouTube video too.
Yeah, I was going to say, wherever we post a video, can we please make sure we include that? Because we have to make sure we include viable sources to whatever we're talking about. And I think this is one of those important things that needs to be properly sourced. So
there we go. It's apparently a second video too. I don't know if I remember the first one. But yeah, I threw that in the comment. Don't get distracted, because we're gonna.
Technically, do you actually have a news story? I don't know. I think we might actually have a news story. Hold on.
He doesn't have a news story.
I mean, cats are great.
He lost all his family in the 20.
Oh no, like crypto
South.
news. I did that last time with some random like actual news story, but no, we're talking about crypto news because we keep it non-political and crypto blockchain centric here. So I don't think North and South Korea have done anything blockchain related. So I don't think that counts. Okay, GPU prices are down. That's related. I'll accept that. I'll allow it.
Moving on. So yeah, this week we were talking CBR. We're gonna quickly go over what it is, and then we'll answer any questions anyone has, and then we'll just move right along to MRC, which is it's not really proposed yet, but it's an idea that's been floating around that would change some ways the protocol works. So first, a quick recap of CBR. It stands for Constant Block Reward, and it is a proposal that would change the reward protocol, the reward mechanisms in the protocol for staking blocks. So it would change it from the current guaranteed 1.5% interest to all coins. It would change it from that to just a constant reward every time you stake a block. So you stake a block, you get X number of Gridcoin. All right, so the 3 main reasons we are doing this is, I'll just read off the 3 in the recent update. It's intended to do 3 main things. Number 1, protocol produced rewards will no longer be given for non-participation in the network. In order to be rewarded with GRC, a participant must help secure the network by staking blocks, crunch whitelisted BOINC projects, or both. Number 2, it's intended to help secure the network. It is expected that this shift in reward mechanisms will incentivize more competition for block creation, which in turn will provide greater instability and security to the Gridcoin blockchain. And that is really the biggest one. It would raise our difficulty from 1, sometimes below 1, to we're estimating between 10 and 20, but we don't know the final number it'll land on because we don't know how large balances will react to the change, but it will definitely raise it. And the third intention is to create an intentional economic model to expand on in the future. So this is really the beginning of a long-term economics project, I guess. And the way we did it is we looked at the Gridcoin protocol, looked at how many Gridcoin were minted total, how many of those Gridcoin were rewarded to for interest, how many Gridcoin were rewarded to researchers, and then we basically said, okay, that's what's happening now. Now, what do we want to make it? What do we want that split between securing the blockchain? It's hard to say this because the percent interest system that we have right now doesn't really incentivize people to secure the blockchain. So we said we're going to incentivize people to secure the blockchain, and then how are we going to make the economics work? How many of the Gridcoin are we going to give to people securing the blockchain, and how many are we going to give to people crunching BOINC projects or researching? And we gave 5 different options. The current winning option is a 75% of the Gridcoin minted goes to researchers and 25% goes to stakers. And that one is winning with 69.25% of the vote weight. And that would, the economic model would equate to a 10 Gridcoin block reward. So every time you staked a block, you would get 10 GRC. And then just going down the list, second place is a 65 for researchers, 35 for stakers. Third place is 85 for researchers, 15 for stakers. And then the bottom 4 are kind of negligible at this point, unless there's some big votes on them. So that's what CBR is in a nutshell. Did I forget to cover anything?
No, that gave a good basis as far as I'm concerned. Because I mean, we're going to be talking about it a little bit more detail, but I think in terms of high level, that kind of answered all general questions. Does anyone in the chat have any kind of basic questions? Not necessarily how it's going to work, because we'll cover that, but just as you know, any kind of high level. Neth, like what percentage are you talking about? The 1.5% interest, or
you were using an old percentage. You said like 69% and 9% or whatever. It's 61% 0.5 for 75-25 right now.
Oh,
I just posted I just posted the link.
My mistake. Yeah, you're right. The 70-30 split has actually raised. Wow. Okay. So that just says voting continues. Vote until June 6th. And the winning option, there will be no averaging of results. The winning option will be the option we choose. So don't vote thinking that, we'll average the top 2 or whatever. No, just whatever's on top is the one we're going to go with, just to keep it as simple as possible. All right. Yeah. And yeah, back to what Goblin said. Are there any other just base level questions? All right, then. So there have been 2 update posts on CBR addressing questions and concerns. The first post will be linked in the details below this video. The second one came out a couple days ago, and we're just going to go over those questions that came up real quick. So the main question that has been asked since the first update post has to do with what is going to happen with the unclaimed interest once we implement CBR. And the short answer is that it's going to disappear. If you haven't claimed your interest by the time we implement CBR, it's gone. It's similar to the proof of work to proof of stake switch that happened between Gridcoin Classic to Gridcoin Research in October of 2014, where any unclaimed Gridcoin Research or Gridcoin Classic coins were burned or sent to the foundation wallet. So if you didn't claim your coins on the new blockchain, you lost them. So there's precedent for this. And it is also important to keep in mind that the poll itself runs to June 6th. It has been out already. It's an 8-week running poll, so it's already been out for like 4 or 5 weeks. And then after the completion of the poll, it's going to be implemented on testnet, which itself is going to run for a while. The proposal says at least for a month, so that means it'll likely run for longer than a month, maybe a couple months. And then it's also important to keep in mind that this is going to be a mandatory update, which means it's a big deal to update. We have to get the exchanges to update, and everyone has to update essentially. So just having a single mandatory update will be given ample warning, like weeks in advance, to make sure everyone gets on the new chain. And because we're also in a period of a lot of changes for the protocol, there may be other mandatory updates in the works that are in development or close to being developed that would delay the implementation of CBR, because if there's, you don't want to have a mandatory update and then 3 weeks later have another mandatory update, because that just stresses the network more than you need to. It would be better just to hold that first mandatory update until the second one is ready and do them both at the same time.
Yeah, and remember, so in the past, right, mandatory updates were kind of that situation where a lot of people, or at least me, I'll be honest, I'm lazy, right? You might just I'll get to it, right? Which means your wallet's probably not helping out the network for the next however long. But you didn't care because you were getting your interest, right? We're now in a situation where we're moving to the point where you need to be on to try and be staking to get that incentive, the constant block reward, right? So just keep in mind that when we say mandatory updates moving forward, it means that if you don't upgrade, your wallet's really not trying to get that money, and it's not waiting for you anymore, right? If I forget to do a mandatory update last year, now I do it, and then I stake, I get all my interest. So just kind of one of those things, right?
Yeah, that's a good point. Because the chain is just going to be a completely different blockchain. This is a pretty big change to the incentive protocol. All right, and then the other point that was brought up on the update thread for the proposal came from Scaletrix. I'm going to read it really quick, then I'll summarize it. All right, so the other update came from Scaletrix, and he basically brings up the issue of staking pools. So his fear is that with the new incentive structure, which says the more you stake, the more you're rewarded, it's going to incentivize people to stake more, which is kind of the intent of the proposal. But a side effect of that is that what happens if many people following that incentive pool their wallets together or use one of the new up and coming staking pool, what'd you call them, services? There's like websites now that do the staking for you. They take a fee and then you get some reward. There's a bunch of these coming up. So what happens if a bunch of people join a pool and that pool becomes big, so big that it ends up owning the blockchain, which is one of the things we're implementing CBR to stop, because before CBR, one or two people could just come on and own the blockchain for an extended period of time. So that's a pretty reasonable fear, but at the same time, it incentivizes, the way I view it, it incentivizes low balance users to pool their funds to stake more often and split the reward, and not so much high balance users. And to me, that's having staking pools for low balance users is actually a pretty good thing, because it instead of having, like, let's just use random numbers here, instead of having 10 whales staking all the blocks, you can pool together 500 low balance users all with 1,000 GRC. Now you have a 500,000 GRC wallet, which is a pretty big whale, and they're going to be staking a lot. So now you have 11 people helping make the blocks, and you pool together another 1,000 people, and you have 12 people helping stake the blocks. It helps decentralize it, as long as major entities are not pooling their balances together. So he suggests that we monitor the situation as it develops, and I think that is pretty reasonable. Does anyone else have any thoughts on what he said?
Yeah, so that's definitely something that I kind of thought about. When you think about GRC pool, right? Part of me says that the next logical step for GRC pool would be to offer an incentive structure to say, hey, if you leave your coins up here, right, we can all pool our power together, and we'll pay you interest for you to leave your coin, like a bank, right? Effectively, a proof of stake pool almost acts in many ways like a bank, right? Leave your stuff up here, and we'll pay you interest, right? So that seems like the next logical step. I think it is important that we just make sure that pools have a. I mean, I hate regulations that like this, right? Because open source, you want to be allowable. But the point being, you might have to set like a regulation or a requirement on the max size of pools. Pools can only be so like what percentage of the actual net weight or of like current blockchain or like available GRC or whatever, right? That might be a requirement. You can also just say they're not allowed altogether, but that's really hard to enforce when a bunch of friends can just put everything on one wallet, right? I do want to say one thing though with person thing man 2 in the comments, because I knew this was going to be a comment really quick and early on, which is over a period of time, I'm kind of earning the same, right? And the answer is that's the hope, right? I want to say yes, and I don't want to say no, especially because I'm not the one developing it. But the point being that if you leave your wallet, the difference being you should be making very similar amounts, right? When you stake and how often you should be staking, you should earn about the same amount. You're earning in much fewer intervals. Like you might only earn or stake 2 or 3 times a year, but that is still equal to about the amount that you'd normally make in the interest. The difference is you now have to leave your wallet on to do that. So your wallet should be on all the time, and you should, on average, right, statistical average, make about the same amount. And there's the 847, a little early. Anything I said that you agree with, disagree with, or I said wrong, Ringo?
To the first part of what you're talking about with the staking pool. Staking pools are kind of a complicated subject at the moment because the only way that I can think of to do it is to actually get in contact with a bunch of people and then send all your money to one of the person and have them run the staking wallet and trust them to redistribute it back. And that's what the commercial pool staking services do. By my understanding, I haven't looked too much into them. But those are going to be short-lived because they're still sort of dangerous now, but they're likely going to be short-lived because there are a bunch of communities, very well-funded communities developing on-chain staking pools where they actually encourage people to pool funds and stake. They run under different protocols. The one I know, Barton, you can love this, is ADA. It's run by a company, IOHK. And they have a very unique staking protocol, and they are actually trying to solve this issue through formulas. Instead of using, trial and error, they're proving different ways to get things done on a staking pool and setting that limit that you were just talking about, Goblin, where after a certain number of GRC on the pool, it's just not beneficial to add more to the pool. So it limits the number of staking pools. No, it increases the number of staking pools. It limits the amount of GRC that a single pool can acquire, which means that the creation of blocks would remain decentralized.
Gotcha. So even GRC pool does that today with literally having different pools of users, right? I mean, there's you can be in pool 1, pool 2, or pool 3. You don't really know that you're in any of them unless you look it up, but because it acts the exact same. But I mean, they can segment it, right? And I mean, but that's, like I said, by doing that, right, a proof of stake system is, I think the easiest way of describing it is it's a banking system. It's just, I mean, the only difference being it's not secure in any way because you have to hand over all your money to someone that does not have any guarantee or reputation or need to actually honor their end of giving you anything back, right?
Right. And that's why it's not that big of a threat right now, because no high balance user is going to give their GRC to an entity that they must trust.
Oh, no. It'll be people with like 100 or 200 GRC.
Right. And that doesn't threaten the blockchain at all. So it's honestly, it's a really good comment. him and I have been having a little bit of discussion, going back and forth on the thread about it, and he basically comes to the same conclusion that you did a couple seconds ago, Gab. It's like, all right, well, if you limit the size of the pool, or he says if you reduce the reward of staking rapidly in succession, which could or could not work based on civil attacks.
Or you extend the cooldown time for coins so that if they're in a giant pool, that gigantic pool can't stake as often, maybe every 2 days or something. But yeah, that guy sounds like a smart guy.
Yeah, so that's basically the only, unless anyone else has anything to say about staking pools, that's really the only concern that has come up in recent weeks about CBR. So we can move on to manual rewards claims. Manual reward claims. Now, unless anyone has any other questions they want to ask about CBR. All right, if anyone listening has more questions, feel free to reach out to any of us on Discord, Slack, read the proposal, read the 2 updates. We talk about a lot of stuff. And we're more than happy to answer any question we can. And if you think of something that we can't answer, awesome. That means we have
We'll
to
send it
think
to
of
Bart.
something new. Yeah, I'll send it to Barton. All right, so moving on to manual reward claims, MRC. There will be a link as well. I should be writing down everything I'm linking. There will be a link to an introduction to MRC post I put together a couple weeks ago. MRC ties in both with CBR, and it ties into our discussion last week on TCD. And if you remember, TCD is total credit delta, which is another potential protocol change in the future. It's less of a protocol change and more of a change the way to a mechanism in the protocol. But TCD would help adoption because it would help new users see immediate rewards, you know? Oh, do you really have a CBR question?
I'm sorry. As you were talking, I was like, oh, crud, he's going to have to edit this. I'm sorry.
All right, hold on.
No, so my question is actually, it's kind of selfish question because it goes back to my initial concern as to why I like concept block reward, right? So for anyone who didn't watch the last episode, the really, really quick recap was I have a Raspberry Pi, right? And on the Raspberry Pi, to make sure that network never gets in the way of me processing what little power I have, I usually get like 9 days worth of work units, right? Which is fairly minimal, right? Because 9 days is like still only a handful of work units, but it's still like 9 days worth. There's been times when a project has been graylisted, and and even when it's still whitelisted, I'm working on stuff, right up until probably 2 or 3 days before it's graylisted. Then it's thrown into the gray list, and then all of my magnitude falls off the charts. Like it all just drops to 0, and I'm not making any of my my earnings, my smooth GRC over that. Yeah, no. So yeah. So I really like it because a lot of these things. So that specifically is being fixed, right? Because I get paid for what I did, pretty much initially, like immediately, as soon as the next block is created. The question is, if I do work units the day before, right? If I do work units the day before something's graylisted, right? And then my work units are wrapped up in the next block, whenever that happens, after it hits the gray list, are the things that I processed while it was on the white list, but that now is gray list, will I get credit for those? And I feel like the answer is probably no.
Well, you were talking about TCD
Was
there,
it?
so that's not a
I'm
question
sorry.
about CBR. Yeah.
Darn it, I
good.
get these confused, stupid acronyms. All right, continue like it was nothing.
But
Thank you.
that will segue us very nicely. We're going to keep that question in because it's a good segue between what we were talking about last week with TCD and how MRC sort of ties together with both TCD and CBR. That was 9 letters in succession. I need to recap. Or I said it. So, right, you asked if you gave your scenario and would you get rewarded for those. It depends on how TCD, total credit delta, is implemented. But likely you would still get credit for that, because when a project gets gray listed, you can force a super block right at the gray listing time, and then any credits done between that last super block and the super block before it would be added to your credit delta and rewarded in the last super block for that project. Right, so that's what TCD is. TCD switches are used from rack, which is a BOINC mechanism, into a mechanism that would be developed by Gridcoin called credit delta. So you are paid every super block for the work you do between those super blocks, instead of having to charge up your magnitude and charge up your rack, and then have some scenarios where a project is gray listed and you just lose all that charged magnitude and rack.
Yes. Yes. Okay. So that question though is to what you pointed out initially, right? And that's how it's implemented. And I'm always going to assume it's going to use an old mechanism, because we only have so many developers. But if that's how it's done, where if we can pretty much say, listen, something's about to be gray listed, so we're going to force a super block, or things only get gray listed after a super block, or all of the work units are cleared out of a queue, that would be awesome, because you're going to have people, some people are making hundreds of GRC a day, right? I'm making like half of one, right? Pies don't really make that much. But the example is still true, and I think that the people who are crunching heavy amounts probably don't want to suddenly just not make that, right?
Right. There are ways to do that when we get closer to actually implementing TCD. TCD is well down the road, and it still may not get implemented. It is still a discussion and not a proposal. So keep those questions on deck from when we get closer.
Yeah, I'm going to keep them off the board.
What you're describing, though, what that does, that rewarding people for the work they do between two super blocks, makes it easier for new users to see to get rewarded right when they start up the BOINC platform and link it with the Gridcoin account. So that is great for new users, just that immediate sense of completion of reward, which is going to be important with manual reward claims. The S is on the claims, guys. And what MRC does, it's pretty self-explanatory. To summarize it in a line, you click a button and you get your rewards. So instead of the current system where you have to stake a block in order to get your rewards, you just have, there's a button in the client or in the wallet or somewhere, however we implement it, and you click it, and it puts your rewards in the queue for a coming block or coming super block, or however that detail gets worked out. Again, MRC is something that will be done further down the line. So the exact details have not worked out. It's still a concept. Let me finish the summary. Let me finish the summary, though.
Okay, no, sorry.
So MRC is important for that new user adoption thing, because it's already difficult for new users to stake, for low balances to stake. So if you can just click a button, then you're not worried about that anymore. And then when you add CBR on top of all of this, it's going to make it even more difficult for low balances to stake, because the difficulty is going to be so much higher. So it's almost necessary to develop some way, whether it's MRC or some other system, it's going to be necessary to develop some way to get what we call earned research rewards from a user's to a user quickly. There's another 3-letter acronym in there called an RSA, a research savings account, which holds your rewards on the blockchain, and then you're taking those rewards and putting it in your wallet when you stake. Or with the MRC, you would be taking the rewards from the RSA and putting them in your wallet when you click the button. So very quick before we get to your question, Goblin, Nethlick brings up the point about spamming the network with MRC. So what MRC implements is what blockchains have done since the beginning with transaction fees. It's a MRC fee. So every time you click a button, you have to pay a little bit to get your reward out of the blockchain, because you're stressing the network when you do it. You're putting a transaction in a block. So the idea between that is, when a lot of people are trying to claim their fees on the same day, or trying to claim the rewards on the same day, the fee increases because you just can't fit all the rewards in the block. So it kind of limits spamming in that respect. And there's also been, oh man, CM brought something up. I'm trying to remember really. Right, there's been talk about maybe having a limited number of GRC, or having a required number of GRC in your research account before you can click the button, which would also help the spamming situation. So maybe you need 20 GRC saved up before you can click the button. And that would be another way to stop spam. All right.
That's literally how PayPal works, by the way.
So we're just stealing PayPal?
Yeah, like most people that use PayPal, as a little aside, most people that use PayPal in order to pretty much, as a mixture of keep costs low internally and stop spamming their internal systems, they pretty much, like a lot of people that use them pretty much say you can't withdraw unless you have at least $20 worth. It's very, very common. Anyway, my actual question, I guess, is I think I'm just a little shaky on that last acronym you mentioned that is written down that I forgot. Where I'm literally making, where I'm literally clicking to get my I'm sorry. I'm clicking to actually get my stuff, my GRC. I guess the question is that replacing something currently that I just don't understand, or is that being added to the network as something completely new and different and isn't related to anything currently done today?
It could be either or. So let's say for the sake of argument right now, it would be replacing the current system. It doesn't need to. They could both exist in tandem. But let's say, just to make it clear, that it's replacing the current system. The current system says that every time you stake, you get your earned research rewards. That's basically it. Did you get that part of the protocol we've got going?
Yeah, but I guess I'm wondering why you have to click a button to get the rewards instead of just getting them.
So MRC says you need to click the button to get the rewards. And you don't just get them. Barton might be able to answer this a little better, but I think it has something to do with the neural net, where it has to do with the way we form super blocks and where the rewards go into the blockchain, and then taking them from the blockchain to the user's account, because BOINC is a separate platform from GRC. If GRC and BOINC were the same platform, it would probably be, we could skip that step. But I don't know enough to speak confidently on it. Does anyone else know why we can't just give rewards directly to a user's wallet instead of having to put them in their RSA account?
Well, not necessarily put them somewhere else. Like, I understand flowing between a bunch of things, but I guess button click also. But yeah, sorry, what were you going to say?
Sorry, I mean, it needs to build up somehow. Like, you can't just reward a user the second they get any kind of thing, any research that would go into their RSA account.
Okay, so this is a good example as to my thing, because I only make, like, again, like between a half and 1 GRC a day with a lot of my stuff. So realistically, rather than rewarding everyone who makes a tenth of a GRC or a quarter of a GRC daily, we're just using this as a mechanism to pool up to help do a significant, what's that other term? To help reduce the amount of clogging of the network. And that other term that I remember is in blockchains that Barton and I talked about a couple weeks ago, with significant number of partials. I don't know, I can't remember the name. Crumbs or something.
Dust,
that one.
Yes, it's mainly a transactional problem, because if you paid out everyone who has, who's in the neural net at the time of the super block, you would be generating a massive number of transactions. You'd flood the mempool, and no one would be able to send any transactions in any blocks until it cleared. And we're talking currently there's about 3,200 CPIDs in the neural net, if each of those is getting paid, that's 3,200 plus payments being sent in a single block, which obviously the block would fill, the next block would fill, a lot of blocks would fill, and you'd have massive congestion. And obviously we don't want that.
All right, awesome. So the idea of the transaction fee with MRC helps, combined with having to push the button itself, helps reduce that threat of filling the mempool. And there might be things we can do in there. What's been going on?
Some good points were raised about charging a fee and perhaps lowering the fee the longer you wait. So if you're the kind of person that's impulsively like clicking the button to claim rewards as much as possible, you're paying a lot more than someone who maybe claims once a week or something like that.
Okay, yeah, and that stuff would sort of work with this because you are tied to a CPID, so you can't just make a bunch of wallets. You'd have to make a bunch of bank accounts. But yeah, that or CM's idea of waiting for a certain amount of GRC to be charged up in your RSA account before you can even click the button would help. But I think one of the biggest benefits to this is the way it would help new users. One of the biggest complaints we get already without CBR is that, oh, come on, I only have 50 GRC, and you're telling me I'm going to have to stake to get my rewards. Great, now I need to join the pool, and that forces a lot of new users into the pool. And we were talking earlier about how having a large pool is kind of dangerous for the blockchain. Well, that system forces us to have a large pool. So MRC lets people leave the pool who want to leave the pool, and people who want like that streamlined project management system can join the pool by choice. They're not forced into it, because the pool is pretty fun. It's pretty simple to use, and it really it's a great project manager when you get down. So I think that's one of the biggest changes I would look forward to with MRC, and then especially once CBR comes into place and you have to really have a lot of GRC to stake, that problem's only going to get worse. Another benefit to MRC that I see comes from the MRC fees. So in traditional blockchains, the transaction fees are rewarded to the staker of a block. And that is likely going to remain with Gridcoin. So with CBR, you'll be rewarded the block reward plus the transaction fees, although we could change it. We could do whatever we want to do with the MRC fees, we could burn the MRC fees. We could also reward those to stakers of a block. We could use the dust or the microtransaction concept to help build a treasury out of because these are tiny fees, right? But when a couple thousand people throw in a tiny fee, it adds up. So you can collect these fees in a community wallet and then vote on how to release these fees. There's a lot of stuff you can do when you have microtransaction funding, essentially.
Yeah, and to kind of go off what Barton's talking about in the chat, just to kind of bring that in.
What's he saying?
It's in short. We're kind of already touching upon it, but what everyone has to remember, and what I'm kind of like obviously learning right now with everyone listening is like with the MRC, right? Because of the way it would impact the network, right? From people potentially spamming, saying, give me how much earn, right? I finished one work unit or whatever, give me my earnings. There needs to be some kind of incentive for attackers and people who are trying to flood or fill up all the blocks to like not want to do that, right? So, this conversation alone, I feel like has probably brought up a few different things that we obviously need to look into in terms of an incentive structure to have people either have it sit and wait, like, if you have over 5 GRC total or 10 GRC total, you get a much lower fee, or if you do it less than once a week or every 2 or 3 super blocks or something like that, you get a much lower fee. If you things like that, where we have to incentivize it so that a quote attacker, right? It always has to be designed with the idea that someone might try to harm it on purpose. doesn't have a good incentive or reason to want to. So
Yeah, and that's a lot of what you said, and the transaction fees. That's why transaction fees were originally implemented in blockchain, is to stop people from spamming the network and attacking it. So it's very, very similar. And like what's going on in the chat right now is talking about what can we do with these fees. Traditional blockchain structure says it gets rewarded to the block creator because that makes sense. They're expending resources to compile a block for the blockchain. So they get, if it's a huge block and they're spending a lot of CPU to compile a lot of transactions, they get the fees from all those transactions because they did more work than someone who compiled a block with like 2 transactions. And that, we won't get into it, but that also ties into why we're implementing CBR, because our blockchain is fairly underused at the moment. So people mining blocks are not getting rewards from transaction fees as happens in Bitcoin.
So we had a few people actually hop on while we were talking. Does anyone have any kind of comments regarding anything we mentioned tonight? Like all those acronyms that I can totally I'm not forgetting right now. I hate acronyms so much. I don't know why you did this to me. This is like my worst. This is like that nightmare where you're in your underwear in front of the class thing. This is like, you pulled out so many acronyms. That's what this is to me today. Thank you.
So the benefits of a burn address for burning fees are spread across the entire network, where it's because we're a protocol-defined inflationary currency, we continue minting GRC. We don't have a cap to it. We're not the gold of cryptocurrency. We're not Bitcoin. We're not a token commodity. We're not a security. We are a currency that continues to mint currency because there's always science to do. So we have this thing called monetary inflation, and monetary inflation just means as more currency gets minted, the value of each unit of that currency goes down. So what burning coins does says, all right, we're adding 1,000 GRC to the network a day. We're going to burn 1,000 GRC through transaction fees a day. So it helps. It's a tool, and they don't have to be in equilibrium. You could burn more than you're making, and you can make deflation. You can burn less than you're making to make controlled inflation. But it's a tool to help counteract inflation, or monetary inflation, which is a very cool thing that blockchains do that I haven't seen utilized to its fullest potential yet, but it could be pretty neat to see on a large scale. So I say that because I see a lot of people talking about burning coins in the chat, and that is the main benefit to burning coins.
Right. Doesn't Binance Coin burn every so often, like every quarter or something?
They do. They have a scheduled burn. They don't do it by the protocol though. They just, because they have they're a commodity. They have a set number of BNB minted, and then they said we're just going to burn them into zero over time. They basically ran a security where they needed to raise funds to expand. So they said, buy all our BNB, and as long as you don't sell it right away, it will be worth more in the future, almost guaranteed, because we'll reduce the number in circulation over time. So it's similar to that. But again, they have a set number of BNB started right at the beginning. We don't. We are going to continue minting currency unless someone comes up with a brilliant way to cap GRC production without destroying that continuing research aspect.
I mean, Bitcoin has a pretty interesting thing set up today, right? Where it's transactions go into what's actually created for the mining, right? So work units would be supplied via the credit for work units would be supplied via transaction fees. I think the problem that we have as a coin at this moment is just that I don't think enough people are sending it around and transacting it to actually create enough that would reasonably incentivize people to actually do work. That makes sense.
Yep.
I just want to say, going back to the previous point, like I don't support having a cap on our supply like Bitcoin has. I mean, the whole idea is to like be a currency, right? And like putting a cap on it makes it deflationary, and nobody wants to use deflationary anything as a currency.
Yep.
Yes and no.
Yeah, I know, Barton. We're not deflationary. I'm saying let's not make it deflationary now. Let's not make it that.
Yeah, I do think it's important to just simply state that I agree. Let's not make it deflationary, but let's make sure we have some kind of metric where we can control the GRC, whether it be up or down, based off of if we need to for whatever economic reason, right? Just that we have that if we need it, not necessarily that we should do it long term.
So that ties back into CBR. If anyone has any questions on manual reward claims, bring them up at any point, but it sounds like we're moving on to some economics discussion, and we have like 15 minutes to continue talking, so no rush anyway. But you bring up you bring up what we did with CBR, which is we said this is the GRC we mint, this is how we want to split it up. And then at the end of the proposal, there's a section called what we, like, I forget the exact title, but it describes what we looked at beyond what we proposed. And one of the proposals is a dynamic block reward, where the block reward changes based on what the network needs at any given time. And the number of GRC minted for research changes based on what the network needs at any given time. And I think that would be pretty cool to see put in place, but that would take a lot of work. And I'm also going to link to a old treasury thing I wrote up, because a lot of people are talking about what we can do with these fees. And there are a lot of things we can do with these fees. Just a couple quick ideas. You can have a set number that are defined by the protocol. Let's say the fee is 1 GRC for simplicity. It's going to be much less than 1 GRC. But you can have 0.25 of that GRC. You can have 25% of that GRC go to the block creator. You can have the other 25% be burned by the protocol. And then the other 50% could be chosen where to go based on the person who's spending the fee. So you could say, for example, you could use it for donations. Perfect idea, Netflix. So microgrid, we were talking about earlier, or a couple episodes ago, needs funding to help continue production. So you would be able to say, look, I want to help support this project, this Boing project. I want to help support microgrid, so I'm going to send 10% of my transaction fee to this project, you know. And this is something. Here you go. Here's your bingo, Barton. This is something called SideStaking. It's the same concept that Pink Coin uses. And it's a pretty neat thing that you can do with microtransactions that really basically summarizes what all you guys have been talking about in the chat.
Can you describe more about side staking, actually? Because I feel like I'm literally that character in books who's like, good thing that guy's not actually like he has to ask all the why questions, because I don't know.
Yeah.
Thank you for the pity laugh, by the way. Thank you.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
You don't know, I don't want to go into like examples. Are you serious? No one. Okay, I'm not going to go into examples. It'll take too long. Just, can you please explain side staking? I hate all of you.
Yeah. Side staking. Okay, so side staking is it's a concept. I don't know if they came up with it, but I think they were the first to implement it. It was Pink Coin, and it operates like so. I earn 10 grid coin for staking. I get to automatically donate some of that grid coin to anyone I choose who is registered a side staking address. They would most likely be a verified individual or entity. And that's basically it. It's what's the donation company? There's an actual nonprofit that you can do this with your fiat paycheck with, where you just automatically donate a percentage of your paycheck to this organization, and then you get to tax it, tax deductible, all that.
Yeah, like like insurance companies, yeah. Or like that one company called 401k. Yeah, I love giving to them.
For the U.S. government.
I didn't. I was dancing around that one. I try to not. Yeah, but yeah. So no, that sounds interesting. So I mean, that's kind of like what GRC Pool does today, in that whenever you go to get your income from the pool, it will it'll say, do you want to give a percentage of your earnings to back to GRC as a donation? So that's pretty much just that mechanism, but for the blockchain.
Yep, and you can do it with every type of transaction, or every type of fee on the blockchain. So you can do it with standard block transaction fees. You do it with manual reward claim fees.
Can't you do that today, but only give a higher fee to the network?
You can increase the fee you pay for a transaction on the blockchain, but that fee will always go to the person who stakes the block. So with side staking, you can say in the protocol, you can say that 50% of the fee is guaranteed to the person who stakes the block, and the other 50% of the fee, the person can either give it to the person who stakes the block, or they can split it among 1, 2, 3, 12, 20, 100 different side stake addresses. So it helps fund. So maybe a BOINC project registers as a side staking address, and instead of having to go to, maybe not 100, but instead of having to go to the BOINC project website and donate everything and go through this whole process, you basically are given the choice to do it automatically, very simply, and with money that you already have to pay anyway. So it's the rewarding the I don't want to use traditional block fees as an example. So let's use MRC fees, where we don't already give them to stake blocking, or to people who stake block. So you're like, all right, I already need to pay this small fee anyway. Where do I want it to go? And they get to choose where it goes. And because the reason you're paying the fee is to make sure you can't keep spamming it. So we don't really necessarily care where it goes. Let the user choose. Maybe we want to put it in the protocol that X% gets burned, X% goes to the block, and then they get to choose another percentage to do with what they want.
Okay. Yeah. So effectively, I mean, we have that capability today, except not to give it to who you want, just to give it to the blockchain and whoever's taking the block. And we have the capability today in the GRC pool, but only to give back to the GRC pool. So what it sounds like is going to be happening is the wallet's going to get a major update in terms of things I can play with.
Is gonna be is not exactly true, but and the capability, we have the concept. The concept exists in blockchain technology because of microtransactions and dust. It's almost inevitable that this is going to happen. It already happened with Pincoin. Pincoin's system is a little more straightforward. For example, they have just a couple different addresses you can donate to. One of them is like their marketing team. You can send money to their marketing team. You can send money to the dev team, stuff like that. But the actual development of side staking would require a little bit of work, and a lot of discussion. This is still very early idea sort of stuff.
So because I love making
more stuff to play with.
Awesome. So because I love making Barton think about and worrying about me trying to purposefully bring something down, because testnet fun things. Is there any disincentive for me to side stake a ton of small chunks to myself? Is there a metric in place?
That's exactly the question I was going to ask.
Okay, because I was going to say, can I give myself 100 different wallet addresses, side staking it to myself? Is there any payment per side stake? Because it doesn't sound like there is, which means I would totally. I mean, I wouldn't actually abuse it, but on testnet, I'm definitely going to abuse that.
So at the beginning, that is an abuse of it. In the beginning, I said it would probably have to be verified addresses. So you would have to verify an identity to get given a side staking address. And how you get given that address could be through a poll. It could be through a centralized entity. I know that's a bad thing to say here, but something like that, because that is a danger where you can just give yourself the fees over and over again. The way Pinkcoin does it is they don't let you split the fee because they don't have any other fee besides blockchain transaction fees. So those operate just like any other blockchain where those fees go to the creator of the block. So the way they do it is they let you side stake your earned stake already. So if you get 10 Pinkcoin, you have the option just right in the wallet there to donate a little bit of that right there. So doing that process negates why would you have to pay a transaction fee on that, so you're not going to keep donating to yourself over and over again. But when you bring fees into it, you're right, you're absolutely right. So that's why I think it would have to be a verifiable address, and there are lots of other things to work out with.
Or at the very least, like a minimum amount, even if it's like a tenth of a GRC, right? I feel like you definitely need to stop people from creating 3 or 4 decimal places deep of sending that to an address. I know this is obviously still, we're in conversation about it and all that fun stuff, but I will say I'm definitely not in favor of only having an extremely small list of side stake addresses. And I say that because it would, like, when I say small, I mean, like Bart mentioned, there'd probably be like 10 options, which of course is just probably a random guess number, right? But I realistically would probably like to see at least something close to like 30, 40, because I think there should be marketing people, there should be people doing things that you have an option to give to. But on top of that, if I want to work on someone's actual project and then give back to the developers of that specific project, all of those projects need addresses as well, right? So I feel like the list gets longer. Obviously, I understand the necessity to not have everyone just be able to send it to whatever address you want. But I think it'd be cool if we figured out a metric to allow that to happen, so that friends could give to other friends, something like that. I don't know.
Well, giving some of your reward to your friend makes sense, but when you're taking a fee out of the network and giving it to a friend, that doesn't really make sense. You're paying this fee to the network, and you want to pay it to something that's going to benefit the network overall. I don't think you should be able to just side stake to a friend. That sounds a little too easy to abuse, which is why I think a drop down menu between like 10 and 50 options, where the person needs to apply for a side stake address, similar to how you apply for a grant. You go in front of the community, you say, this is my project, this is what I'm doing. I am Einstein at Home. This is proof that I am the guy who runs Einstein at Home. Please help fund my project by side staking to my address. And this is my proposal of where I'll put your money when you send it to me. And then the community says, give this person a side staking address. Something like that. I think that would be reasonable. But when it comes to just staking to your friend, I think that can operate the same way Pinkcoin does, where, all right, you got a CBR reward of 10, you want to send one to your friend, go ahead and do that, pay the transaction fee, and you're good to go. So
no, I get that stance, right? Like, where if I'm going to pay it to my friend, I might as well just send him a transaction rather than a side stake, right? Or like set up a script to just send him a transaction routinely, right? Instead of doing all the side staking of dust. I guess I understand it, right? And I'm not saying it needs to. I'm just saying it would be interesting to at least get to see that to happen, where you could side stake anywhere. I definitely understand that there needs to be probably a limit. I would definitely say there probably definitely needs to be more than 10, right? I'd say it probably should float somewhere around 30, given the number of projects there are floating in and out, the number that, grayless, potentially even microgrid, having different developers and all that, and marketing marketing group, the developers, individual developers rather than a developer group, right? There's a lot of deviations and derivatives of these different things that I feel like 10 would be extremely restrictive. I know we're getting in the nitty gritty of something that isn't even really fully baked out yet, but yeah. So sorry.
Why not just donate to these people? Why do we need to do a staking thing?
Because we like making things overcomplicated.
Yeah.
Well, it makes it like we saw this with Pinkcoin. Like people donate more with Pinkcoin because staking is a thing. It's easier to say donate 5% of my rewards rather than like going out of your way to send 5% of your wallet's balance or something.
I guess you could also
Easy.
say like for all of you people who like get paychecks and like have like jobs with all those takeouts, it's a lot easier to say, yeah, take out 4 or 5% of my income for my 401k than it is to say at the end of a year pay 4 or 5% of your income to your 401k, right?
It's psychological.
Yeah, a lot of people just, unless it's being taken out passively, a lot of people don't even really do it. So I don't know. It's just, I think it's a psychological thing, realistically.
2 responses to that. What Noah and Goblin just said, yes. And then when you bring the fees into it, the fees aspect, that's completely different because that is choosing what to do with the fee you have to pay. It's called, I call it an anti-spam fee. You have to pay this fee anyway. You don't need to always give it to the block creator. Let's figure out where else you can put it. And to further support what those 2 just said, the company I was thinking about before is called United Way, very famous. You're allowed to just donate to them out of your paycheck, and there are studies that say as soon as they did that, more people donated to them. Like it's proven that you make it simple, make it difficult for the devs and simple for the user, and they'll do it. Take that part.
So, something I want to add in here, just so we're not getting like off track of like why we have a fee, and I think Barton was trying to get at this. We have a fee so that if blocks like get full or something, the block creator has an incentive to put your transaction in their block. But if that fee goes somewhere else, there's no incentive to put the transaction in the block. We don't really have this issue now because our blocks are basically empty. But like if we get as big as Bitcoin and have all those transactions, the block creators have no incentive to put your transaction in their block.
Thank you. I was going to make that point in a second.
So, like, I think we definitely need to consider adding. We could add additional fees on top of the block creator fee, but I don't think we can take that away.
I agree with you. I think keeping the traditional transaction fee going to block producer is fine, and I think a lot of or a portion of other fees should go to block creation anyway, because with MRC you're going to be adding stress to the person creating the block anyway, so putting more transactions in it. But I don't think the idea of using fees for other things is completely out there.
Okay, so does anyone have any questions regarding this or anything else? Chime in, tell us we're wrong. Tell Barton he's wrong.
All right, cool. We talked about, just to recap, because we did go a bit off topic today, but it was great. CBR, MRC, and then we started talking about what to do with MRC fees, which brought us into side staking. MRC, well, those actually go in order of which is most developed. CBR is proposed, developed, it's ready to be implemented on testnet. The poll ends June 6th, so get out there and vote if you haven't voted yet. MRC has been talked about at fair length, and it seems to have a pretty good standing in the community about as a thing we should implement. I will say there's a little hesitation towards it because of how it shifts the incentive structure. We talked about that in episode 3 of the Fireside chat. We call it the centralization problem. And then side staking was just a fun aside tonight. That is not very developed at all. It's just a nice little thought about what we might be able to do to help fund other projects and Gridcoin development itself. So if no one has any other questions or comments.
I have a quick question that I don't know if anybody will be able to answer, but what kind of timeline are we on with MRC in regards to CBR? I know a lot of people are concerned with not being able to stake once CBR is implemented. So I know a lot of people are going to want MRC like immediately after CBR, and I don't know if that's going to happen.
Before. It should be before.
It should be before, but that's not our timeline at the moment.
I get that, but it should be before.
I think ideally, I mean, I can't speak for devs, and we don't have any here who are actually working on it. But if anyone's at the hangout on Saturday, be sure to ask them. But I think that CBR, it doesn't have a timeline to actually get implemented because of the testing that needs to be done, and because of that, and whether or not other mandatory updates are going to be coming out as well. So I think right now it's at discretion of core devs, but I think getting MRC and CBR out at the same time or very close to each other is a good idea.
Do we have a dev list, like a feature list timeline, development timeline? I'm coming up with the words as I go.
Roadmap?
Yeah, thank you. Wow. I work in tech. Wow, this is. I don't know what's. I. Something's wrong with me today. Yeah. Do we have a roadmap? I don't know. There hasn't been enough trains tonight or something. I don't know what it is.
Can you guys hear the sirens?
Yes.
I can. Yeah.
They're coming for you. But yeah. So, do we have a roadmap posted anywhere that's updated regularly, or?
The most recent roadmap is the 4.0 2018 roadmap. It was posted on Steemit, and with luck, there will be a more definitive roadmap in the coming months. I'll say that. But other than that, and even the 4.0 2018 roadmap is not very solid. You know, it's just a bunch of ideas that Broad had compiled with a team of people. And really just described them. But basically everything that's mentioned in that roadmap or that proposal, and every single one of them was approved, are features that are still being discussed heavily. Like MRC was in that proposal, CBR was in that proposal, TCD was in that proposal, DWP, which we'll be talking about, dynamic witness participation, in a future episode was proposed there. A share drop onto a new blockchain was proposed there. Not a share drop, a rebase onto a new blockchain. There was a share drop conversation at the same time, but rebase.
Yeah, no, I just ask because I think we should have like a quote maintained roadmap, but my recommendation would be that we have like one that literally just has 3 categories of like short term, middle term, long term, right? Where it's just, this is what we're kind of actively working on. Here's things that are currently in the pipe, and here are some dream items. Just so people can have an idea of at least what updates to expect, not necessarily when it's going to get done, right? And obviously, with a big disclaimer that says all of this is subject to change. You know, there's no set timeline for this. This is just what we're actively developing. Just because I feel like to get that answered, you always have to find someone to ask that question.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a good idea to have something like that, like a sort of kind of roadmap. I mean, it's, especially in our case, it's very difficult to maintain like a roadmap, because just look at our 2018 roadmap and we're like, yeah, we're going to like get all this stuff done. And then we started off the year with all of this forking, and it took like 2 months to fix. And now it looks like we're not going to implement everything on that roadmap in 2018.
Yeah, that was fun. But I think you're right. Or maybe something, a wish list, or
Yeah, I definitely think those three categories, the short term, middle term, long term, is a good idea. Just like don't even put a date on it. Just
Yeah, because
Short-term,
that's how a lot of larger companies work, right? Like they're not giving you a this is coming out May 22nd, right? Unless it's already fully developed, and that's just a release date. They're going to say this is what's happening in the next 6 months, this is what's happening in the next year, and this is what's happening in the next 3 years, right? And that's completely up to subject to like up to change. And I'm not even saying we put with those dates on it. I'm saying we literally say this is what we're kind of currently working on and what will be released in the next few patches whenever that happens. So.
Yeah, I think that's great. And what you guys are saying in the chat too, it helps other developers see what we want built, what's already approved, and if they're just blockchain coders, we're like, wait, I want to help these guys, but what do they even want? You know, they can come in and be like, hey, I want to help you code this aspect of your protocol. That sounds pretty neat. We can get. But I would expect to see that coming out in a couple months, 1 to 2 months. There's a roadmap for a roadmap. The conversation has not ended on the roadmap. We'll put it there. And are there any other questions? General or CBR MRC SideStaking? All right, then we will wrap up this episode of the Fireside Chat. Thank you everyone for joining. It was a great conversation. It was really fun going into SideStaking. That's something I really love. that was great. If anyone has any other questions about CBR or manual rewards claims MRC, please ask Slack, Discord, Rocket Chat, anywhere you can find us, Telegram, and we will do what we can to answer them and clarify everything for you because voting does end on June 6th. I'll say that again, voting ends June 6th. So vote in your client, even if it's on the last day of voting, and let's get a solid consensus on where we want to go with CBR. Other than that, we will see you next week, where I'm pretty sure, don't quote me on this, but I'm pretty sure we'll be joined by a community member who wants to discuss sort of a more philosophical aspect behind what we are doing as economic structure, like what the difference between a debt-based economy and a economy built on science. So that could be a pretty fun conversation after all these episodes talking about kind of hard protocol development. So that will be, if it happens. If not, we'll have a different topic up. So keep an eye out. But that will be next week right here in the Gridcoin Discord server, Thursday, 8 p.m. Eastern, midnight UTC. Have a good weekend, everyone.